Hello, this is Claus Jensen presenting the last classical game in the Candidates Final 2011. And after 5 draws in the previous games, it was all tied going into this final game. Unfortunately, we got a winner here because otherwise the match should have been decided in rapid or blitz, and that is not fair in such an important match. Don't forget that the winner of this match will play an aunt next year for the world title. Enough about tournament formats, let's instead look at the last game. Boris Gelfand is white and Alexander Grischuk is black. And for the first time in the match, Gelfand opens one d4. Knight f6, c4, g6, knight f3, bishop g7, g3, and d5. And now it's some sort of Grünfeld defense with a white kingside fianchetto. c takes d5, knight takes d5, and bishop g2. Knight b6, knight c3, knight c6, e3, castles, castles, and rook e8, and with this move, Grischuk has a potential e5 in many lines. For example, if b3 here, then black can take advantage of the long diagonal and play e5, and d5 would then be met by e4. So instead, Gelfand plays rook e1 here, and again e5 could be played. And then d5 would follow, and this has been played several times and gives a very interesting play. But instead, Grischuk plays a5, and the idea of this move is to advance the a pawn as far as possible to put pressure on the queen side, and also give black the option of developing the rook to a5. Queen e2, bishop g4, forcing Gelfand to play h3 immediately. And now Grischuk retreats the bishop to e6, bishop e6. And now Grischuk has achieved a weakening on h3, so if he at some point develops the queen to d7, then Gelfand would have to defend the h3 pawn. And also the bishop on e6 supports a possible knight c4 for black. On the other hand, it rules out a possible e5, since the bishop is now blocking the e-pawn for black, and perhaps that's why Gelfand now dares to open the long diagonal and plays b3. Not only preparing bishop b2, but also taking away the c4 square from Grischuk's pieces. Grischuk now plays the very obvious a4, following the plan of making space for the rook. Rook b1, a takes b, and queen c8, attacking h3, and making space for the rook to d8. And with the bishop on e6, the rook is doing nothing on e8, so rook d8 is a good idea at some point. Gelfand moved king h2 fairly quickly here, so he probably didn't consider g4, which could lead to f5 and a very sharp position. So king h2 was the move that Gelfand chose, and Grischuk continues his rook developing plan. He plays rook a5 here. And the rook on the 5th rank is a nice position because it helps control a lot of squares. It makes it more difficult for white to push d5, and also it makes it impossible at this point to play knight g5. Rook d1, rook h5. Grischuk transfers the rook to the king side, putting further pressure on h3, and Gelfand now has to make a decision. He can play h4 here, but that would again make g4 available for Grischuk's bishop, so Gelfand instead decided to go for knight h4. Bishop f6, f4, and the position is now very complicated. Gelfand would have nothing against Grischuk exchanging his dark squared Grünfeld bishop for the knight on h4, even if he should have double pawns in the h-file, because it would make his own dark squared bishop so much more valuable. And Grischuk plays the logical rook d8. f5 could be possible here, must have been considered by Gelfand, but again he tries to play a solid move instead and plays queen f2. And now Grischuk makes a strange decision. He exchanges on h4, and we just discussed that this must be in white's favor, and nonetheless he decides to take on h4. And then he plays a very interesting move. He plays knight d5. He plans to sack the exchange, because now follows of course knight takes d5, and then bishop takes d5 would fail to e4 and d5. So Grischuk had planned this and played rook h takes d5. And now the idea is that if Gelfand accepts the exchange, bishop takes d5, bishop takes d5, then Grischuk will have a very good grip on the light squares in the center, and white will have some serious pawn weaknesses, and that should be compensation for the exchange. But Gelfand doesn't take the exchange. He calmly plays bishop b2, and then Grischuk plays rook b5. And despite the double pawns, Gelfand is now clearly better. He will play e4 and d5, leaving black under very strong pressure. He could in fact have played e4 in this position, I believe. It looks very good. But instead, Gelfand plays queen e2, attacking the rook, which moves to h5, and then comes e4. Bishop takes b3, rook dc1. The threat now is d5, so perhaps the best reply from Grischuk would have been e6, but still Gelfand would have a very pleasant position. Knight a5 was a move that Grischuk played, and d5, and now the black pieces are caught in enemy's territory. The knight and the bishop is having big problems, and also the rook here is now restricted due to this d5 move. b6, and it's amazing to see how uncoordinated the black pieces are now. Bishop e5, eyeing c7, and therefore, well, perhaps here Grischuk should have given up the rook for the bishop. The bishop is very strong, and the rook is restricted in movement anyway, and this could be an idea. But Grischuk played c5, d takes en passant, f6, bishop a1, rook c5, rook takes, b takes, and queen b5, and everything is under attack, and as usual Grischuk has very little time left on the clock. He misses a chance to drag the game longer here, because he could have played bishop a2, and after rook b2 then queen c7 is strong, because now Grischuk saves the bishop, because rook takes a2 would fail to queen f4 check, king g1, rook d1 check, bishop f1, queen g3 check, rook g2, queen e3, king h2, rook takes a1. This long line is of course impossible to find with no time left on the clock. So instead came queen c7, but then rook takes b3, and if knight takes b3, queen takes, king f8 and e5. This is hopeless for black, and instead Grischuk played knight takes c6, but then came a5 anyway, attacking the knight, knight d4 and queen c4 check, and here Grischuk resigned, I believe, or did he lose on time? I think he resigned the game here, but in either case the position is hopeless for Grischuk. He's down a piece, and soon Gelfand would play rook b7, and the black position is undefendable. Gelfand has won the match and the right to play a match for the world title against reigning world champion Anand. The venue is not known at this time, but the match will be played some time in 2012. I hope you enjoyed my coverage of the candidates matches 2011, and I hope to see you on my blog at klausjensen.com. Bye bye for now.